Namaskar, good evening to the viewers of Pandit Ravi Shankar Music Foundations. Once again, I welcome you to our talk show series named Reflections, celebrating centenary of none other than Bharat Ratna Pandit Ravi Shankar ji. Before I invite our guest today, let me have a short brief about that guest. That at the age of just 21 years, he was a member of the Indian Classical Music Society of Chicago, and at present he's giving his services as the artistic director of the World Music Institute in New York City. He is none other than Brian Keir. I am glad to welcome Brian Keir to share his memories with us of Pandit Ravi Shankar ji. Hello,
Nabarun,
namaskar.
thank you so much.
Good morning, Brian. How are you?
Good morning from Boston and good evening to India.
Thank you. So nice to see you. Hope you are well.
I am very well. Thank you very much. Thank you
And
for asking.
our other guest of today, Gaurav Mazumdar, the senior disciple of Pandit Ravi Shankar ji, who will talk to you about Pandit Ravi Shankar ji. Gaurav da,
Nabarun, nice to see you again.
Gaurav,
thank you, Gaurav da. Same here.
Brian, my friend, so nice to see you. Welcome.
So nice to see you.
Looking
And just to let our viewers know, a big thanks to these two gentlemen and Ms. Sukanya Shankar for getting this series going. And I believe that this is the 31st episode of this weekly reflection series. So just as a supporter of Indian classical music and of course the great maestro, thank you for doing this weekly event and shining a light on this special year that it is, a special year in many ways, as we know, but unprecedented times does not derail this celebration.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you both.
Brian, as you know, because you're watching the session for last many weeks, we have, before starting a session, we asked some questions from the viewers of Pandit Ravi Shankar Music Foundation as a quiz type, and they answered the questions, and who wins, we give some gift to them, send gift. So today, the first question, Dada, I should repeat because yesterday nobody answered the correct answer of the questions. So once again to the viewers of Pandit Ravi Shankar, just do hear the first question. Which second city have a profound influence on Pandit Ravi Shankar ji? Which second city have a profound influence on Pandit Ravi Shankar ji? And the second question of today about our guest is that which year Brian Keir met Pandit ji for the first time? Which year Brian Keir met Pandit ji for the first time? And the third question is that which musical festival Brian Keir is co-founder and producer? Which musical festival, global festival in fact, Brian Keir is co-founder and producer? And the fourth question, name of the male vocalist who always impressed Pandit ji. Name of the male vocalist who always impressed Pandit Ravi Shankar ji. Now over to Gaurav da.
Thank you, Nabarun. Brian, what a pleasure seeing you. And to begin with, how are you dealing with such an unprecedented time in human history?
Right.
What is your take on this? What do you feel? How do you see people changing their reaction? How are you dealing with it?
It's been difficult because I love the connecting audiences with music. So this is so difficult times. So now it's again, as you are finding ways to connect with audiences and reaching audiences and fans and patrons and students. So it's been really a challenging time for especially for us as a not-for-profit organization in New York City. I mean, we've been going for 35 years of producing concerts from around the world, around New York City. and it's a labor of love. I can tell you, for everybody who's worked there, you know, a passion. So that's it's a dagger in the heart of not being able to connect as we would normally, and bring and host musicians and introduce audiences to new music, or reintroduce musicians to audiences. So it's been trying, you know, I would say, you know, and we're, again, we would normally be quiet over the summer season, but again, you were a victim of one of our cancellations, sadly. You know, we have had a concert scheduled with yourself and Rupak Kulkarni, the great bansuri player, and Hindol Mazumdar, the tabla player. It's been trying to reschedule and not know when we can reschedule, you know. But health-wise, all that, everything is good, you know. Health, everything, you know. There's, you know, people in much worse positions than myself, so I don't take anything for granted, my friend.
And I think this is one quality about human beings. We face challenges. Ultimately, we win and we find ways, and ultimately we find ways to connect. Most important. And what a blessing we have this internet, and
oh, I know. It's been our,
you know, it's been such a blessing. I've been thinking before we started this conversation, I just looked at the messages, and Sukanyaji from London, she said, "I'm waiting and I'm watching."
Thank
so,
you, Sukanyaji. I miss you. I miss you all. I was supposed to be with you all in April when you were doing the tour and the Centennial, and my dear friend in Chicago, Jim Fahey, had asked me to bring 100 of these records that I had packaged up and ready to display, and, you know, be part of this Centennial celebration in some way, because, you know, I just was trying to shine light on the year as well, every way possible. But that was kind of the idea. It really started with this record collection of me being a DJ and a music collector for years of Indian classical music, and building up this record collection of Ravi Ji, and then with his 100th year of seeing, you know, 100 physical records, you know, 12-inch records, you know, which are, you know, seeing 100 of them together en masse is pretty breathtaking, as far as a staggering amount of work for one artist to achieve, you know. And of course, maybe a few or some are European pressings, Australian pressings, or Japanese pressings and things like that. But it's staggering. It's the amount of work that this man has put out. So sorry to jump the gun and get right into it. Yeah.
Wonderful. You know, it's wonderful to straight go on to the reason why we are here.
Yeah.
You know, and then we can find our way through, and we can you know. But let's begin our session with let's know a little bit more about you and your journey, where you come from, and how did you get interested in music, and especially Indian music and Indian culture. Let's go through that a little bit, Brian.
Sure. So I'm one of 8 children. I have two brothers and 5 sisters. So I have an army at home, and all of the boys were musical and illustrators or creative in some way, you know, and all the girls were athletic and musical singing wise, but not professionally, or not going out there and playing an instrument in a sense. So, but my mother played the banjo growing up and for a short while, and she and my father were both very much into music, and so music was part of our home. And I always credit George and the Beatles as a huge gateway to introduce me to Indian classical music. But my journey, I started playing drums. I mean, I actually first played saxophone growing up for a few years and played in the school band. And then my brother always had a drum set that he never played. And so I always played his drum set when he wasn't around. And then, so I just, you know, dropped the saxophone a couple years in, and then took the drums up as a passion, and then was in the school band for drums and playing music, and was playing in rock bands and did all of that. And really into jazz, classical. My mom took me to see Ella Fitzgerald and, you know, Tito Puente and Louis Bellson and, you know, Sun Ra, amazing, you know, music around me that was influential of seeing live music. And I think it was a concert at Ella Fitzgerald when I was very young that I saw we were at this place called Ravinia up in north of Chicago. It's a beautiful amphitheater concert space where you can sit on the lawn, and then there's an amphitheater of people can sit in the seating area, seating bowl. And I looked over. We'd always sat on the lawn with our family because there was an army of us, and the seats were probably more expensive to sit in the bowl. But we'd always have family reunion type of things at Ravinia, and we'd go and see music. So this year we went and saw Ella Fitzgerald, and I was a young lad looking over the seating bowl. And something struck me that I saw thousands of people in the seating bowl who I didn't even know were there in the park. You know, we were in another part of this whole amphitheater space or a park seated space, realizing like we were all here to see this one woman on stage singing. You know, it was just it made a resonant impact on me that we were all there seeing this one person on stage singing. But music has always been very impactful on me, and really realizing the tools of music and the power of music throughout my journey of being falling into, as I say, the professional career of music. So as a teenager, I was into the Grateful Dead and into, I give Mickey Hart, and of course turning me on to Zakir Hussain, and then of course seeing clips of Monterey Pop Festival. And Ravi Ji was, mind blowing, and seeing audience members like, Jimi Hendrix and, the Monkees and Jerry Garcia and all these great figures of the time, being blown away by Ravi Ji and Ala Raka. And of course, this is pre-internet. So I didn't even know for years that Ala Raka was Zakir Hussain's father. It was not, they had two different last names to me in America, so it didn't click. But, anyways, long story short, I really fell into music of playing drums, and then was bored kind of after a while of rock and jazz, and really knew that there was other beautiful music out there. So I started getting into Indonesian gamelan and music from other cultures, African djembe and African drumming. And then really I had my head turned inside out from the tabla, and really with Ravi Ji and Ala Raka, that kinship and that musical connection that just floored me. There was nothing higher than that at that point as far as musicalship, and then realizing that this maestro is still with us. This Bach, this Beethoven, this was still, both of them really, because there was a number of years I was following. A lot of my friends kept following like the Grateful Dead and doing that whole thing. For me, I was following artists like Ravi Ji, Ali Akbar Khan Sahab, Ala Raka, and then Nusrat Fateh Ali Khan, and these other great artists who are with us, making sure that I could absorb as much of their live performances as I could growing up as a teenager. Because, no disrespect for the Grateful Dead, who was also a gateway and introduced so much music, but, I had been there and done that. And there was something about Indian music that had hooked me when I was a kid with the Beatles and George, as I said. And so that really led me to my, musical instrumentation of being a percussionist. And then after a while, realizing I'm never going to be the maestro on the tabla. I'll leave that to the maestros. But if I can somehow, because my goal was I was going to go to the Al Harper College of Music in California. That was after school, I was going to go out there and try to make it, as far as studying the Indian classical music. And then, and I had a few conversations of something that kept me in the Midwest. I'd born in Chicago. My father took a job in Wisconsin at SC Johnson, a family company. And so we moved to Wisconsin, and I had always gone to concerts, luckily, starved of culture in Racine, Wisconsin, so to speak, but would go to Madison, Milwaukee, or Chicago for Indian classical concerts or music concerts. And you realize that you're that connected an hour or two between all these cities, which, you could get in a lot of concerts or see an artist a number of times. So I would see Ravi Ji anytime he would come to the Midwest growing up. And then I fell into moving in. I first saw Ravi Ji when I was 18, just before 18, in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. And he was performing with his son Shubho, and Shubho, what a talent as well. And then Kumar Bose. So that was that, I think it was right after the Golden Jubilee tour, shortly thereafter, or maybe that was before that. I think it was his 70th birthday or 70th year, if I'm not mistaken. But he, that had an impact, seeing Ravi Ji live was just like, okay, I'm hooked, on this artist. So I had seen him every time he'd come to the Midwest, and then, eventually moved to Chicago myself, became a board member of the Indian Classical Music Society, which was predominantly doing concerts in the suburbs of Chicago and out in the community in many ways. So I was the sole Western white guy, trying to convince the Indian board to do more shows in the city proper and rent out venues and theaters and host other concerts that, weren't happening in the city. There was a lack of Indian classical concerts in the city of Chicago. Most of them were happening in the suburbs for the community. So I've always been that kind of Westerner trying to bridge the gap of bringing the Indian classical music and dance later to the masses any way I could. So I ended up working at Tower Records when there were music stores for many years. And then through that, connected through many friends in the music industry and all the while producing concerts and DJing and doing events on the side. And then just basically eventually led it into a job at the city of Chicago for about a decade, producing events and festivals where I really got to cut my teeth and had great mentorship with producing events and festivals and programming there. And a lot of the programs there were free and open to the public. I mean, we pay all of the artists, of course, but it was really a way to introduce and bring artists, and bring audiences that weren't really willing to risk taking a chance on experiencing music, or as well as just introducing artists to bigger venues and new spaces and that. So I feel like I had a role to play in Chicago in a sense that I didn't know at the time before I moved to Alapar College in that. But it was my family and just some direction that, I could do some good in the Midwest if I stayed in some way. And so that's what I feel like I've tried to stay worthy of that, doing my part for the music and that while I was in the Midwest. And so from that, having a long relationship with the Indian Classical Music Society, having a relationship with bringing in artists from abroad, doing visas for artists, helping navigate artists who don't know anything about visas. So all these things I've done over the years for artists to try to, get them in front of people and bring the music to people. So, but I've been very blessed over the years to work and produce concerts by so many artists that many aren't with us anymore. That, I don't take any of it for granted, and I feel like it's important work. Even if it's just one concert or one music experience at a time, it's one more additional opportunity for that artist on the road. It's one more audience member that they might win over, and so it's different than working at at the record store. You were exposing somebody one record at a time, or listening. I'd always put the East Meet or put on Ravi's Angel records on the playlist, or try to put feature Ravi G any way I could get away with it while I was at the record store, but then trying to reach masses, in different ways. So the arts, I mean, I don't know what to say. The arts it's a magic thing, the arts, because you can't define it, and it's hard to box it in, and music is so hard to describe the impact that it has. So there's been music that Ravi has put out that has, really helped me personally as well, as well as just music that I've been exposing others to for many years, of trying to champion his music to others. But so I guess my journey is, I'm not done, I was lucky at the Department of Cultural Affairs to create a couple programs. I created this Ragas in the Garden with the Chicago Park District to bring ragas in the Chicago gardens and parks throughout the summer. Created the Ragamala program, which is an all-night Indian classical concert that we've been doing as part of the World Music Festival every year for the last 8 years. And of course, we've had a number of maestros and artists as part of that, showcasing the young, the elder, the senior, as well as, unique collaborations and Jugalbandis. A couple years ago, we had Ambi Subramaniam and Alam Khan, the two sons of the maestros, so they did their first Jugalbandi like their fathers, many years before, recreating these kind of connections and North meets South as well. So, and then also, not to disrespect, but Ravi Ji was a champion of Carnatic music. So I always try to play favorites in many ways of the Carnatic music because it's always it's an older system, of course, but it's always it doesn't get the attention that it like with Ravi and the sitar, of course, that him bringing Hindustani music to the world. The Carnatic music never got as much attention as the Hindustani music. So I've always tried to balance that, but that's another thing about Ravi Ji. He kicked down the door and then brought in you know, all these other Hindustani artists with him, as well as Carnatic artists. And, you know, so that's just a beauty of that gentleman, you know, of some of his groundwork.
And that's exactly.
Then I moved. I was drawn and moved to the East Coast by the love of my life here in Boston, as a matter of fact. So I moved to Boston, never thinking I'd be an East Coaster other than helping produce events and do things like that. And then so I settled here in Boston, which you know, after a year of being here, I started the Global Music Festival with Boston University. I realized being in Boston that there is a need for more music, even though there's the New England Conservatory here, the Boston University, Emerson College, Berklee College of Music, but there was not a lot of civic programming, a lot of things that I was doing in the Chicago area of doing free events and programs that bringing civic funding as well as public funding together to bring the arts. So I was able to convince Boston University to do a free festival for a few days of bringing global music and global events and workshops and that to the Boston public, as well as, of course, to the Boston University students. So, and then about 2 years in or 3 years in, and here in Boston, I moved to New York City to accept a job at the New York World Music Institute. And small world as it is, I used to fly to New York City to see Ravi Ji, Nusrat, Alwaka, all these guys when World Music Institute would host their concerts in New York, because some of these shows wouldn't come to Chicago. You know, some of the presenters wouldn't have them in Milwaukee, Chicago, or Madison. And of course, unless it's somebody of Ravi's stature, that would only play at Symphony Hall in Chicago. So in between, there wasn't a lot of presenters to bring this music unless it was the Indian Classical Music Society or independent not-for-profit organization. So I would come to New York all the time for concerts, and they would be World Music Institute concerts that I would come and attend. So small world as it is, I would accept a job years later working at the World Music Institute, helping program and blessed to bring, you know, more music to New York City and you know, musicians like yourself, of course, but music from all over the globe. So I've been very blessed. I don't take any day for granted for the work that I feel is very important that we do for the audiences and for the artists. I can stop at any time, Gaurav.
Pandit Ravi Shankar would be 100 this year, and amazing. I think it's a beautiful landmark, especially with the book coming out by Oliver Trusk. Mm-hmm. Especially when you read the book and you realize that you need to finish this book in one go. You know, there are some books you read and then you keep it and then you read it. But this book you pick up and you want to finish it, even though it's almost 600 odd pages. As Oliver put it correctly, 526 pages of sheer material on, you know, his life and his music.
What a gold mine of information, because I'm sure, like, you have read, you know, the My Music, My Life back then, and then it was reissued, and then there was the Ragamala, you know, the autobiography, but there really hasn't been a biography. So I mean, Oliver did an amazing job. I mean, amazing job. Really wonderful and very, very balanced, you know, and very not biased. Yeah.
Which is beautiful, which is wonderful, and which is, I think, Guruji would have loved that. He would have loved that.
Honesty.
Honesty, exactly. So, celebration for a man of his contribution. Let's speak why Pandit Ravi Shankar, why celebration for him, and what does he stand for really when it comes to not just Indian music, but world music. In world culture. I mean, he's an international figure. He's not just an Indian musician. He's much more than that. Take us on a journey and tell us why really we consider him who he is, and what did he do? What did he do? What was his life all about?
It's kind of amazing that his life, like, and that family, almost like, you know, have to go back even with that family, because he was groomed, you know, almost set up. And as you maybe elegantly said, or Oliver, in that choice of a young man at 16 or 17 or 18 or 19 that he had to make as far as being a dancer and being a musician, you know. So, but for that family, and just to interrupt, you know, respect and to the whole Shankar family for the recent passing of Amala, the Uday Shankar's widow, 102. I mean, amazing, 103 years old. But that family, I mean, Raviji growing up in a family of, in this family of dancers, and then him, Uday, bringing that music and dance of India to the West, even to Paris, and then to the West, so Raviji bringing, being one of one of these figures who was part of his brother's troupe, he, carried that on, passed the torch 2-3 decades later when Raviji himself surpassed and outshadowed his own brother's, superstar popularity. Because a lot of people don't know that his brother was way more popular than he was, growing up. And so Raviji was, lived a nice life as a dancer and entertainer and a performer and that, and then really got to the nitty gritty of really making that choice of being a sitarist with the under the guidance of Alauddin Khan, or being this dancer that, which probably a little more privileged life, or maybe easier cushed, life that was on that route. So I could imagine that decision being a difficult one, to making that Maher, decision of staying in Maher for 6 years under, Baba Alauddin Khan. But I mean, I think that you have to go back and say that's, Raviji was almost set up with this mission within him to continue on, whether he knew it or not, or it was an instinctual thing to bring the music now of India to the world, not just to the West. I mean, to the world. And then I think that you have to realize that he, at the time, became such a figure. I mean, with his All India radio stature and his, his solo career, even before he, had his bandwagon attached to a Beatle. I think we have to remember that back then there was no, there were not a million channels. There were no Indian television, I mean, there was no, and in the US there were 2-3 television channels. So when there were any of this, later celebrity and appearances, that this man became a superstar, because there was not, there weren't that many outlets to feed our audiences and patrons and arts lovers and consumers in the United States and across the world. So when there was only a few channels to watch, they watched them. So I think that it was amazing to see that celebrityism that Ravi fell into, of course, because of George Harrison and the Beatles and this whole phenomenon of, I mean, as one of these advertisements I have in my collection says, he was the only man to play at the Concert for Bangladesh, the Woodstock, and Monterey Pop Festival, So, I mean, these were 3 pinnacle major events in the 60s and 70s that were, amazing publicity events, of course. So,
here, if I may ask you, I have a quest. I have always asked this. Pandit Ravi Shankar in India, starting from 1939, he starts to perform. The first one in Allahabad, my hometown. And then later, after 6.5 years, he moves to Bombay, and then he performs in small music circles. And then he becomes a famous musician in India. And he started traveling to the West in 1956. And almost after mid-60s, almost towards the end of 60s, he meets George Harrison. It was really not the Beatles, but George Harrison who he connected with. A. B. Pre-George Harrison connection also, he was a famous musician performing at all the top venues, sold out, whether it was Royal Festival Hall or you say Carnegie Hall or anywhere. So he was already there. How do you see things changed post him and George Harrison meeting? He was already famous. He was already a sought after musician. He was very busy, especially from Oliver's book. You can make out what a busy life. I mean, he was going back and forth between America and Europe and India. And in India, he was there for maybe, in a span of maybe 2 months, he was playing maybe 60, 70 concerts and then going back. he was already, and he had already done music for films, he had done music for theaters, he had done ballets, he had done musical productions, he had already written Sare Jahan Se Acha, he had already created several ragas, he was national conductor for All India Radio. He was all that before he met George Harrison.
Right, right.
What happened after? What happened at that point when, if he was already famous, he was already known, he was already... Tell me what was that thing about?
Well, I mean, I think that's your. I think Oliver said it best. You know, aside from Gandhi, and there was no other Indian figure bigger at that time. So I think that it catapulted him to superstardom. Of course, when you have somebody like the Beatle phenomenon, of course, and then at that era of '66, that permutation time, so I mean, I think that we forget that how fast everything moved back, then, because in '66, Raviji was already, as you mentioned, a superstar or a big name before a Beatle attached himself to it, and then just catapulted himself. But even within that year, Raviji threw a Indian music festival at the Hollywood Bowl in 1967 with Bismillah Ali Khan, Raghu Rao, and Alawaka and Alayappa Khan Sahab. So it was like to 20,000 people. Ashish Dutt played, So I think it's you almost forget it how quickly things moved back then as far as popularity, because there were I think we forget that there's no social media, there's no that. So it was
more than popularity. I think it was about opportunity.
Oh,
Pushing it to the next level of reaching out to a mass audience.
This guy, Raviji, talk about motivated. I mean, didn't stop. I mean, you look at his recorded work. I mean, he's done over 75 actual, different albums, and that's not soundtracks. Those are just albums that he recorded, 75 albums at least, official. So, I mean, the guy never stopped. So, I mean, and then again, when he came to California, he wanted to start a school of Indian music because he knew the popularity of it and that. So, I mean, he didn't miss a beat as far as ambitious, I would say. Ambitious is and just, he went for it. He didn't stop and rest on his laurels or try, he would have faults, things would fail and things would, a school wouldn't work, or he would, this didn't work in India, and then he'd try it here, so it's like, he lived it and learned it, so I mean, I think that he didn't rest.
He was ready to make mistakes and learn from it.
Exactly right. He wasn't ready. He just did it, and that's what I think that was the amazing amount of, and that's what I think that part of this collection and some of these items, it's just like.
What amazes me, Brian, is that it's not just he did it. He did it even though there was a lot of criticism. He did it because time was really, there was only 24 hours in a day.
That's right.
Yeah.
But he did it with class, and he did it with professionalism and artistry, I mean, the artistry.
And commitment that, he brought out manuals, he brought out brochures, he brought out leaflets where he would explain about Indian music, so that his energy and the effort he was making could be understood in the right way, or maybe understood the way he wanted people to understand. And this is where I would request you to show, I mean, you have such a wealth of these posters and brochures and booklets, and you showed me this book by Jan, who basically collaborated with Guruji.
I guess that goes to, and I think I can share screen. I can share a couple items here as well.
Yeah, but before that, let me just finish this thought, otherwise, and I think around this time, soon after, as you said, he acted quickly. He was the right person at the right time. That's of course. But I think Monterey Pop, Woodstock, and then I think 1971 Bangladesh, I think this sealed the whole, yes.
Yeah.
We will talk about it in detail.
Because then you had Apple Records pushing, and then the Raga, the film, which George embraced and took on, which was a documentary film that took forever and cost, as we found out in the book, thanks to Oliver, cost an arm and a leg out of Ravi's own pockets, and many.
And he finally he said, oh, let's think about it. The point when he said, let's think about it, he had already spent from his pocket 500,000 in those days.
Right, right. So, I mean, you think of what, what the efforts that he made. And again, what I had a couple notes of Raviji that I wanted to make out, just the humanitarian work that this man has done, of course. Concert for Bangladesh. I think a lot of people forget that Concert for Bangladesh was the very first superstar concert benefit for humanitarian work. And I think that speaks volume, because that is a regular thing that we see now in our concert world and our benefit world and that, but it was Raviji, his heart's being pulled, in his homeland, and then him leaning on his friend George to help. And of course, I think it shows the strength of George, the publicity power of a Beatle, of what can happen in not only did they pull it together, they recorded it, filmed it, sold it, and it made, they all got Grammy awards for it and so forth.
It's still selling. Yeah, let's go through your
treasure. So this is like one item. This is almost like a box set before a box set, but this was made while Raviji was here in New York City in 1967. So it is a 3-cassette, 3-cassette manual. What I love, I think this is the program here.
What a treasure that is.
It was great. It's like a must for every library. So it's a box set of instruction manual, and of course some history, Ravi, adding in all the instruments. But what's beautiful about it, as is Jan Stewart. Jan Stewart is an artist who did a lot of the Ravi posters and yes, booklets, and also George Harrison work. But Jan Stewart was a Los Angeles artist and a dear friend of Raviji and stuff. But she designed the entire book, so it's just a piece of work.
How precious! Look at the notations and the.
Yeah. And then it's got, of course, Lakshmiji, Alaraka, all the senior disciples. And this is, we'll give credit. So this is Elise Barnett. She was the one. And so to jump into that, Elise Barnett was a piano teacher from Vienna. She escaped Vienna early on and went to India. And she connected with Raviji and Uday, I believe, or maybe Ravi's other brother in India when she was younger. And then when she moved to the States and settled in the States much later, she came to New York City to be the ethnomusicologist professor at CUNY University, City Colleges in New York City, up on the upper north side in Manhattan. So she invited Raviji to come and be a professor of music in 1967. So he was here in New York City for a year, and they recently, and I think we can share later, or maybe, but CUNY University has a lot of the digital recordings, thanks to Sukanya and Kat Calabrese and the East Meets West folks and the Ravi Shankar Foundation. They've been able to get a grant to digitize a lot of the recordings from the city colleges archives, so that they can extract all of these reel-to-reels of Ravi lessons, even Lakshmi Shankar concert that they just recently digitized. Alaraka has taught there when Raviji was when a substitute for Raviji. So there's all this material that is digitized, that they had recordings, reel-to-reels, but I knew that there had to be more material there. So when I connected with Michael Crowley, the librarian, musician librarian at the music library at CUNY, we went through the archives and found, other photographs and folders and material and other items that are in their own collections too. So this exhibit that we were working on, 100 Years, Hundreds of Memories, was a kind of a love letter from New York and from me personally, from my own collection of stuff, but also trying to tip a hat to his days in New York City, of his time in New York City of teaching. So I'll share a couple items that some of these are CUNY, not in my collection, but I'll just share these items, and then some of them I'll explain if they're in my collection, so I'm not going to take credit for things I don't own, of course, but again, these are actual all like physical items. I mean, these aren't just, JPEGs that we found or anything like that. And, so I mean, I can try to take a photograph of like a red vinyl only from Japan, but, they only come out in certain ways. So, I mean, I've got lots of these types of items that you want to see them in person. So hopefully one day we'll have this exhibit. And in the meanwhile, I've just put together kind of a reel that I'll put together and we'll debut with the World Music Institute at a later date, so we can, get some of this material out there and continue the celebration for the centennial year. But I'll share some of these items here real fast and let me see if you can see some of these items. Now, can you see this?
Yeah.
So this is these are his class notes, from New York City from 1967, from his days of teaching there. So he was meticulous and organized as far as giving out instruction, class notes, materials for all of his students and that. So a lot of these are actual class items and instructions. And I think that this is actually, if you see, can you see this? The City College?
Yeah.
So maybe blow it up. But this is an introduction to Oriental music. So this is the class introduction, the overview of the class from him teaching that year. So these are just some of the items that they have in their collections. I mean, this is a whole folder of items, and actually this is a hardcover copy that the City College made of that very same book I was showing you. This might be the very only hardcover copy in existence, as a matter of fact. But like if you know Colin Walcott, the musician Colin Walcott, the student of Ravi G. So this is like a note from City College that Colin Walcott checked out a bunch of these slides of Oliver Khan and Ravi G for permission, asking for permission from the City College to use these slides for publicity for others. So they have all this ephemera in the City College's collections, as well as things like this. These are a photo shoot.
Oh.
This is a photo shoot from that day that they made all those cassettes I just showed you. So this is him recording that instructional. So they have all of these negatives and some great images. This is one of my favorites of that.
Beautiful.
So again, I don't own that photo. That's in the City College's collection. But these are some of the items that we're looking to unearth and share this coming year. And again, I guess I can share some of these, some of the book design and some of this. This is Elise Barnett and that, and Jan Stewart's work, which is amazing. Just so detailed, of course. But then, I mean, we get into, this is just part of my own vinyl collection of Ravi G. These are all Ravi vinyl.
Oh my God.
And then
I want to see that again, please. Can you stop there for a few seconds? Oh my God.
So this is just a sliver, though. I swear. This is I've got over 114 or 120 different vinyl just of Panditji. So Ali Akbar Khan has only put out about 60, 50. I've got almost a completist collection of these maestros. But Ravi G has got Japanese versions in red vinyl, or all these other versions, which is amazing. Another thing that I hope to unearth at some point with Sukanya and the family's permission is this. I found a reel-to-reel conversation with Ravi G from 1967, and it's never been aired. It's such a beautiful recording. Of course, I gave the recordings to the family. But these have never been aired from 1967 or since 1968. I'm sorry. So this is a beautiful recording with the music director of the station then. And so some of the items I've collected over the years, like this was a promotional pin from Angel Records, and that I gave to Sukanya and the archives, that I donated some of these items, just promotional things, over the years. This is a wonderful poster. This, if you look.
Oh.
So this is a portrait of Ravi G by an African-American psychedelic artist back in the 60s. His name was Eugene, I forgot his name. But he did like a couple of the Doors posters, the Doors, the rock band, the Doors. And so he's like a 60s psychedelic artist, and he did this print. But if you keep looking in on this print, it's amazing. All of the words of Ravi's hair are all like different, talking about Ravi G and the sitar and other things as his hair. But then if you look up in the fret of the sitar, he's got a whole other little miniature portrait of him in the neck of the guitar, or the neck of the sitar, so to speak, which is a pretty amazing work. just one. So that's framed right now. Some of these items, some of these are all framed, ready to be displayed, so to speak. This is a Japanese.
Tell the viewers about the exhibition. What sort of date are you thinking and where, so that if anybody's passing through that city and if they're around, they can come and watch this exhibition.
We will definitely look to have it when we can with CUNY University at City Colleges. So that's going to be in New York City, and that will be the physical debut of these. And I'm just going to share items as we go. So this is Ravi G, cover of a French jazz magazine. And again, just to give you an example, some of these vinyl, these are the same records, but different covers, different releases. Ali Khan and Ravi G and Alaraka, but one in Europe and one in India. So, but the same release, but strikingly different in many ways. So the exhibit, we hope. We will do it in the fall. This is one of my favorites, the Ganesham program booklet.
Oh yes.
Another beautiful photograph of these two maestros.
Oh, what a...
and I love this. These are all just album. Can you see these scrolling through? I'm just not sure what you can see.
I can.
Okay. So yeah. So some of these, you'll see are like this is actually from the Bill Graham. Bill Graham was a concert producer. These are his own collection of the George Harrison Dark Horse posters that were firebombed back when the Reagan era and all that. So these are actual like items from there. This is a unique item. This is Zakir Hussein's very first gig in the United States.
Really? This was the first concert?
This is Zakir's first concert. He replaced his father because Alaraka was sick, and he replaced his father at the Fillmore East. This was Ravi G's third and final appearance at the Fillmore East in 1970. But Alaraka was sick, and Zakir Qureshi came to replace his father at the time. And then that was the journey that we learned in Oliver's book, or I think I learned there, that Ravi G tipped the job in Seattle teaching, and Zakir stayed and moved to the United States. So
Washington University.
That's right. So, again, these are old program booklets of Uday. And you forget that Ravi G was so young, in some of these. But yeah, this exhibit will happen in the coming year. This is a great program booklet. I got this, and it was from 1973, and it was signed by all the artists. Signed by Alaraka, signed by Ravi G, signed by Zakir, signed by Kansab, or Panditji, So it was amazing, all of these items.
If I'm not wrong, that magazine Sancharini was edited, and I think it was brought out by Guruji's second brother, Rajendra Shankar. Sancharini.
So again, I think the one thing is worth bringing attention to is the fact that some of this, Panditji doing the Ravi Shankar and his Festival of India, and really being a gateway to many other artists and bringing other artists from India to the United States for the first time. I mean, not these two, but these two artists have been a gateway, And I think that Ravi has continued that even through the 90s and the 2000s with this Festival of India, bringing over other younger artists and musicians and that to the US. And I think so some of these are all just program booklets. I love this photo of all the students at.
My God. These pictures are not, I don't think it's seen before.
So some of these are just, other 1968, magazine covers and stuff like that. So then I have a handful of these other just press photos and things like that we're going to air them at the Concert for Bangladesh announcement. This is a program. This is actually a rare one. I guess I can stop. I can keep going with some of these posters. I love this one because they touted the fact that they all won a Grammy. They
Bangladesh concert.
Yeah. And so it's great to see all these. Ravi G Alaraka or Alaraka, Alabakansa. So, but I think it was this is a rare one as well. This is the 1938, you know, the Victorola 10 volume set of Hindustani music that Ravi played the estrage, and, you know, very young. All of these. So in addition to the actual vinyl recordings, I have some of these 78s as well.
My God.
But yeah, you were talking about this program. This is a rare book, which I do have here somewhere. This
Yes.
and they again they only made, that was supposed to be a series of books, and they only made one, you know. So
Yes. And you see the name there, Penelope Easterbrook. She lives in Delhi, and Guruji sent me to her to learn Western music and piano. And a wonderful lady, you know.
this was a good kind of a good snapshot. I guess this is just to show you before they were all framed, just a snapshot of, these are just 27 different vinyl records of Raviji, you know. So imagine this times 4 of the amount of work that this man has put on vinyl, you know, of all different album covers too. Every one of them are all different. So just a massive amount of work. But you gotta love some of these old psychedelic posters too. These, you know.
Yes, I love them. There is something about those posters. It really, you know, it's got a certain humor. And
right, there's another one. Oh, this I have to share. This is so unique. So I got this. This is from 1968, if I'm not mistaken. This is a fold-up poster that they ran in the Philadelphia. This is the back of it. It was in the Philadelphia cartoon section in the Philadelphia Inquirer in 1968, September 15th, 1968. So this was a free poster. This is how we forget about, like, in the day of like the celebrityism or superstar. You know, you don't get that anymore. You're not going to get a Lady Gaga free poster in the Philadelphia Inquirer or something like that. So
show that picture once more. I would love to see that.
So this is a you know, from the Philadelphia Inquirer in 1968, September 16th, fold up in the back of their comic. It was the back of their comic section, you know, and it was just in an everyday newspaper. So you forget about things like that kind of helped generate him into a superstardom, and you know, this is like a European version of the concert for Bangladesh with the blue version. Here is a Italian version, or, you know, or so every you know, all these different things. This was another one I loved, that flowers and incense welcomed at the Hollywood Bowl, you know. And then this is a good just a caricature, you know. This artist just, oops, I think I can blow it up here. You know, he was that, you got Peter, Paul, and Mary back there, and then, you know, Eartha Kitt. You know, these are superstars of the time, and then Panditji, you know, in the middle as their. Anyways, lots of items like this that you'll see in the exhibit.
I think we need to get to the exhibition. And spend a few days just to go through everything, and
pretty amazing. But yeah, the amount of work. I love this photo too of just the him that back there, you know.
Yeah.
But the amount of work that this man has put out, you know, I think that this is, you know, again, I have collect. My mom was a hoarder and collected so much stuff, so I'm very picky about what I collect. But records, I'm guilty for sure. But definitely, like the Ravi memorabilia and ephemera, I've been, you know, just kind of figuring this would be a good way to showcase just a sliver of this man's work. You know, I mean, these are just one night only events and things like that, you know, that you have to remember. These are program booklets and concert posters and stuff like that were happened only one time. So it's kind of neat to be able to collect some of those memories. So that's why the hundreds of memories, it's really thousands of memories. It's not you know, it's 100 years and thousands of memories, really. But I figured the keeping with the 100 theme would be good. This is something unique as well that I think Sukanyaji said that she's never seen before, but it's a Ravi was the music director for this play on Broadway at the Hudson Theater in New York City, and this was it ran for 3 days. Ravi didn't even see it. It was down before he could even come back and actually witness it. But this is the one of the promotional posters for the Broadway show.
He scored the music for this.
He was the music supervisor for this. Yeah, and again.
And can I ask a question here? Is this the guide which was made into a movie later?
That's right. That's right. I think this was the Merchant Ivory, if I'm not mistaken. Or yeah, I believe that was the.
I thought it was Conrad Rooks, and then later Devanand and Devanand's brother Chetananand, they made an English version.
You're probably right.
Then there was with Devanand's brother Goldie, Vijayanand, they made a Hindi. But I'm not sure if these two are anyway. But I'm going to find out if the guide with story written by R.K. Narayan.
Mm-hmm.
The famous.
I had to get that because again, I saw it, and I was like, I've never seen this before, So I again just had to.
Because the music for the movie here in India was done by S.D. Burman.
Mm-hmm.
Extremely great music. This was 1965, and you're saying this was which year?
I think this is 66, if I'm not mistaken. This is 66, I thought. So it was in Oliver's. I know Oliver referenced it in his book, so we can check it again. But again, yeah, I had never seen, and I've never seen another copy anywhere else either. Just one. This ran for 3 nights in New York City. That Ravi was the music supervisor for. But again, a lot of these items you forget that they were just like, every night everybody had a program booklet or a poster or this, that, and the other. So over the years, of course, from my days in Chicago, of getting to connect with Ravi Ji, I've had the privilege, of course, to meet him a handful of times. But I'd always try to keep the concert poster from his appearance of that, the Chicago appearance at the Symphony Center or wherever else it were. So or wherever else it was, so I could have that memorabilia in a sense, or those memories. But now, of course, my girlfriend's like, it's gotten out of hand. I've got so many items. So this is a great excuse to share it, and as I was hoping to share it in the year of the centennial in this extraordinary year. So this was just I've been trying to take a photographs of all of these items now and be able to create some sort of online exhibit that I can at least debut and share with World Music Institute and still continue the celebration, even if we're not in person, be able to experience it. But I do hope to be able to do it in person, And again, I think it was just I know that Sukanya and the Grammy Awards and the Grammys have done their own exhibits, and that, which is a whole celebration I know of its own, which I have yet to experience myself. But so this was just a kind of a personal.
And there is an exhibition in India with
Bangalore,
then in London. So there are several things going on, and you know what? Whether we celebrate this year or next year after,
it'll be worth celebrating.
This man is eternal.
Yeah.
It's always a time for celebration, whether 100 or 101, 102. We'll still be finding some stuff from some university or maybe some concert venue or from some art collector or music collector. We'll find some new stuff. So there's always something new to share and tell all of us the contribution he has made, and he's brought world music, Indian culture to the world map and into the consciousness of people that there is something so beautiful, something so classical, something so unique that you come and you just let yourself go without any other influence. Let music do the trick and the magic, and then it is sheer bliss.
That's right. That's right. He, and him as a man, he was so jovial and such a funny, he just assumed the special quality as well of a man. So, he was selected. He was selected to be that champion for all of us, and for many musicians to kick down the door. And as I said, in my note, when I did this, I had booked a concert on his birthday, as it turned out, on April 7th in 2010. Which was Prabhayan Chatterji and Rakesh Chaurasia and Yogesh Samtai. Great artists, And then I didn't even think about it at the time. I was just plugging my dates and booking the calendar, you know what I mean? And these guys were available in the States, and of course trying to showcase. And then so I had to ask permission. I was like, we can't do a concert on April 7th. I just wouldn't feel right if we had this concert on April 7th that I had booked kind of unknowingly on April 7th as, you know, Panditji's 90th. So I kind of drummed up the courage to ask, you know, Sukanya and Panditji if they would give their blessing to turn the concert, and of course ask Prabhayan and ask Rakesh and Yogesh if their blessing, of course, if, you know, if they thought it was okay and with their blessing to turn this into a proper Panditji tribute as we should, if it's his 90, if it's on his actual date, you know. And they all thought it was a great idea, you know. And again, so as I made in my note, it's like one more time Raviji lent his name to opening the door to many others, because a lot of people may not have known Yogesh Sensa, you know, a lot of people may not have known Rakesh Rasya, may know who Hari Prasad is, but you know, may not know who Prabhayan is. So again, using Raviji's name as a tribute to his 90th, it was a sweet gesture. And again, him just going above and beyond, using his name as a gateway and just keeping that gate open as he has since he's passed, you know.
As always. And you know, there are some messages from Sukanya ji from London. If you allow me, I want to read it. There are some, and sometimes, you know, so just bear with me. There is one. The first message, of course, I'm waiting and ready. Then she says, hello, Brian. Lot of love and blessings to you. And then she mentions here, Colin Walcott was a wonderful disciple of Raviji. He was very heartbroken when Colin passed away. He passed away very young, and
yeah, he did. You know, and he was a very successful jazz musician in his own right. And so again, Colin, being a sitarist and tabla and percussionist, really helped shine light on Raviji as well, I think, and you know, really with that jazz world.
Sukanya ji further mentions, yes, Brian, there is so much more work to do. That I agree. There's always so much more. Yeah, and she confirms Sancharini was edited by Rajendra Shankar. Then she says, Victor Records, you can hear Raviji playing the Sraj. And then Sukanya ji saying he was a dashing, gorgeous, stunning, handsome man.
He was.
I won't argue there. Yes, I never knew that, she's saying. And then Chinamay is saying, Conrad Rooks worked with Raviji. I think that was Chapakua, if I'm not wrong, the French production, on which Guruji for the first time, Philip Glass came in contact with Guruji. And she's saying, I need the guide, Brian.
The guide? What guide? What guide? What?
That guide, that poster you had where he was the supervisor.
I told her in an email a week ago or so. I told her in an email, like, all of this is going to end up with her, you know, and it probably will make my girlfriend, you know.
You know, she's made this 2 archives, one here in Delhi at the Ravi Shankar Center, and one. They are so foolproof in terms of preserving every material. It's really, you know,
it's so important. It's so important, and I think that artists forget about that when they're alive, you know, and I think that, you know, being a keeper of that, you know, I mean, over the years I've collected many things of Zakir Bhai, and you know, clippings and pressings, and I've given them to Tony, you know, and I've given them to Zakir, and I've given, you know, just to make sure that somebody has all of this stuff, or somebody is keeping all of this stuff, and whether it be cover of magazines or, you know, even just clippings or things like that. So I mean, I think it's important work, historic. I mean, I'm a history buff, so I love history. So music history is even more so, you know, and then Panditji is even more so. So, but I think that I love that historic factor of it. And then, but she's right. There's so much more work to do. I think that, so for me, we're always discovering. I shared, oh, did I bring it? I shared and recently discovered and bought probably the most expensive vinyl I bought ever, but it was a BBC recording, a BBC recital, one side of Kanal Dutt and Ali Akbar Khan, the other side Ravi Shankar and Kanal Dutt from 1957. a recital, and it wasn't, and this was, they sent it on vinyl to different radio stations because that was how they syndicated shows. There wasn't, you couldn't air it and stream it then, so you had to send a recording of what you're going to broadcast all at the same time or so forth, or send that. So I found this vinyl recording, which cost me a pretty penny, but
How much?
I hundreds of dollars, let's put it that way, and I knew it was going to go for a lot, because I knew that in this catalog of what releases people, some of these were classical items, some of these were very rare BBC recordings and stuff. So I was ready to throw down, just to make sure that it fell back into the hands of the Khan family, to make sure that it falls back into the hands of the Shankar family, which both of those recordings are now sitting, So Mary Khan has that recording now with the Ali Akbar Khan Library, and Sukanya and Kat and everybody at the Ravi Shankar Archives now have a recording of that recording that I found. So I'm always going to be looking out like that. As I found that, the 2-hour recording of the interview with Panditji, from 1967. So I'm always, looking out, and I don't know how I'm the one to keep finding these things, but luckily I find them and make sure that they get to the right hands, or I'll collect them and then pass them on to the family and make sure that they get up there. But for now, these items are kind of just passing through me for the moment, so we can display them and get them out there, because Sukanya can only do so much as well. So I feel like this is my effort in some ways. So I'm very humbled. I have to tell the story of how I first met Panditji, though, and maybe that was your question, but it was maybe a trick question, because I didn't share it yet. But it was actually at Carnegie Hall in New York City that I met Panditji for the very first time. This was after seeing him several times, and I somehow, became friendly with Zakir, and Zakir invited me backstage. So it was Swapan Chaudhry, Zakir Hussain, Kartik Shashadri, and Raviji playing at Carnegie Hall. And this was one of those concerts where, of course, it wasn't happening in the Midwest. So I flew to New York to see that show, being a tabla geek and a music geek myself, the two maestros of tabla with Raviji on stage here in New York. So I flew to that show. I somehow bumped in with Zakir, and I had an illustration, a drawing, a portrait that I was working on, because I also, was a little bit of an illustrator and an artist. So I was working on a portrait of Ravi, who was almost done, and I was working on a portrait of Ali Akbar Khan and Ali Raka, my golden trio, so to speak, of these maestros. So Ravi was almost completed, though. And then I had the tablas were done with Al Arka, and I think the Sarod, and I was working on all that. So it was a work in progress illustration. And so I bumped into Zakir, and Zakir was like, "Oh, the first thing Zakir, of course, being Zakir, did was like, why didn't you finish my father first? Or why did something to that effect, And so, but he was like, he really liked the portrait of Raviji. He's like, you should show this to Raviji, And I'm like, I'm sure, of course, So he takes me backstage, which was upstairs at Carnegie Hall. So he takes me backstage, I'm like an 20-year-old kid, or, I don't even remember. I was 18 or 20 years old at the time. And I was just like on cloud 9, just meeting Panditji for the first time. So Zakir introduced us for the first time. So Zakir introduced me to Ravi Shankar. I mean, like, that's a blessing within itself. But I happened to be backstage, and Sukanya was in the dressing room away from all of us, because it was just after the concert. A lot of commotion, as you know, and people, saying goodbyes and hellos and all of that, and getting autographs or whatever and so forth. So I was just kind of there with my drawing, and Zakir introduced me to Ravi, and Ravi was like, "Oh my goodness," he loved the drawing. And then he ran and got Sukanya out of the dressing room, pulled Sukanya out, and showed her the drawing. So I was kind of like, the sample boy of showing off my artwork here, but it wasn't finished. I felt like I couldn't pass it off. I didn't want to hand it over and that and so forth. So I had friends who were down on the sidewalk that were waiting for me outside, because I was like, I guess I'll just go try and say hello to Zakir real fast. And then I end up getting introduced to Raviji. And then I was like, I got friends outside. I really, should go. I don't want to be disrespectful. So I was up there for five minutes, maybe tops, something very short. And so I was trying to leave Carnegie Hall, the backstage, after meeting Sukanya for the first time and meeting Panditji for the first time, and them just being, you know, super open arm and welcoming. And I try to leave Carnegie Hall to go to my friends on the sidewalk, and I'm leaving, and I open a door, which I thought would get me outside to the sidewalk, and I open the door, and I'm on stage at Carnegie Hall. This is the door to the stage, and the ushers are out there cleaning. And I was always remember that joke, like, well, how do you get to Carnegie Hall? You know, practice, practice, practice. And it was like, no, you just walked through the wrong door. Actually, is
Yes.
So, but that was my first meeting. I think that was maybe '93, if I'm not mistaken, when that concert happened.
Wow. But
Anyway.
that tells me. Have you seen the latest poster outside Carnegie Hall?
I have not. No.
Earlier it was, how do you get to the Carnegie Hall? Practice, practice, practice. Now it says, how do you get to the Carnegie Hall? It says patience, patience, patience.
Okay. Yeah, right. That's right. Sadly, what times we are in. Yeah. So that was my you know, blessings, and I've been very lucky, of course, you know, to be trying to promote through Jim Fahey in Chicago every time Raviji and Anushka, and even her solo debut there. My friend Mervan Mehta, Zubin Mehta's son, is also a concert programmer and concert producer, and he was the one who booked Anushka's debut solo concert at Ravinia, actually, for that coming back to Ravinia, that concert performance place. So again, I've always been trying to support, you know, the next generation. Of course, even Anushka being one of them, of the pillar, of course, from the tree. So it's been a full circle. You know, I've been very blessed to be embraced by the family, and then just trying to do my part of trying to promote the Indian arts how I can, not just to the Westerners, but I mean, I've turned my friend DJ Rekha, who's like a, you know, based in Bhangra, a noted amazing Bhangra DJ. I took her to see Viku Vinayakram and Zakir and El Shankar, and, you know, blew her mind, you know, and she was not of the classical, you know, this is my grandparents' music type of thing. So I will turn and try to convert to everyone, whether you're Indian or whether you're Westerner or whatever, you know, so.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. And I'll say a big thank you for that. Big thank you for doing that, Brian. And Sukanya ji is saying, Brian, you're amazing, and I'm very grateful to you.
Thank you. Thank you. No, I'm grateful for
all are grateful. Thank you for coming to this show and speaking and sharing such wonderful energy. Most important, what I take back from today is this wonderful energy, this light you're beaming out of all this beautiful artifacts around you, Raviji's music, his work. And we'll continue the celebration. The celebration is on this year and beyond. And we look forward to seeing you. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you all.
What a pleasure, my friend Brian. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Keep up the efforts, and I'll continue to watch as well. So
try my best. Thank you.
Be safe, everyone. Thank you for tuning in.
Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. Thank you, Brian. Is it audible?
Yes, we can hear you.
Thank you,
It was
Nabarun.
really a very informative session, and so much precious collections you are having of Pandit Ravi Shankar ji. This is the main thing. So thank you for joining us to this show, and hope that you will be safe and you are safe, and best wishes for your exhibition, which we are talking with Gaurav just now. And with it, we come to the end of the show of today. To the viewers of Pandit Ravi Shankar Music Foundation, we will meet next week with other eminent personalities, and next week we are having our Independence Day special episodes. So be in touch with us. We will meet next week. Till then, good night and be safe for all the viewers, and especially Brand, namaste, and Gaurav, good night.
Thank you, Nabarun. Thank you.
Thank you all.